Error handling techniques. Most of the time, there are errors, there are exceptions, exceptional situations that you expect to happen in your application. Of course, it all depends on your business domain, on the type of application that you're working on. But I would say that most of the time, there are some sort of errors that you have to gracefully handle. So how do you handle those errors? Well, turns out that there are many techniques that I will share with you today in this Dev Coffee Talk. So you might want to watch this video because I'm going to share with you the top most used techniques for error handling. So welcome guys to a brand new Dev Coffee Talk. In today's session, in today's Dev Coffee Talk, I want to talk about error handling and what are the top most used error handling techniques and approaches that you will probably have to use in a real world application. This relates to defensive programming. Defensive programming is always being aware of the errors that might pop up when you're working in an application, right? So try to work out barricades across your program to encapsulate and handle gracefully the parts of your application that are most likely to produce an error, right? So protect the rest of your application from them. Validation and assertions are very well known as a technique to prevent errors from happening. Now, a different situation, a different scenario is when you do expect errors to occur, to happen in your application because you're depending on some other third-party application or because you're using a specific database and you need to handle specific errors coming from that database, or because there's some sort of external file or system that you cannot control. How can we handle those errors and what are the typical techniques that we can use? So let's start with the very first technique, which is correct the error. So when we say correct the error, we basically replace the wrong value with a fresh, safe, correct value. We are basically overwriting the error value using a default one. Most of the time, applications require some sort of predefined default values or default configurations. Most of the time, these are defined by developers, but more often than not, they can also be specified by users. Those default values may include a file format to be used as a fallback, a background color for a game, or even a background song. This is a very useful technique. We have used it a lot. We see it applied in tons of different applications. But of course, it all depends on the specific case, the specific business domain, and the type of application that you are working on. So this is typically applied to non-critical applications, which are those in which you can work with a fallback value and have no issues, or at least no important ones. Next technique, ignore the error. So ignoring the error basically can only be applied to specific scenarios, specific situations in which having an error is not a big deal to our application because it can basically continue working with no side effects. This is often the case of background running processes that are not relevant or that can be easily retried later with no side effects to the final users of our application. So we basically have a program that is dealing with some pieces of data, and when one of these pieces of data is corrupt, is incorrect, is wrong, and produces an error, we can safely ignore the error, just skipping that piece of data and continue working. Most of the time, this is what streaming applications do. Think of a streaming service and the final users who are watching the stream in live time. They will definitely not care about a single corrupted frame as long as you provide the next frames with no errors. And this is because correcting the error might actually incur some extra delays to the whole streaming, and that is of course killing user experience. Another example in which we can actually do some sort of correction to the error in this case is having some sort of thermometer application. So some device that is taking inputs from the environment and sending those inputs to some server or system that is processing those. If one of the measures is wrong, we can just skip that one and use the previous valid measurement, or just wait for the next one. As I said, and let me repeat it to you one more time, this always depends on the kind of application and the kind of business domain you are working on. You cannot always ignore errors. And this statement is what leads us to the final technique, which is shut down. Shutting down means basically turning off everything, stopping all the processes, stopping the whole program from continuing because the error is critical. This applies to specific scenarios in which we can neither correct the error nor ignore the error, so we need to shut down. And this is often the case of programs that control health-related hardware. So for example, an X-ray machine or an X-ray device that is controlled by an application, by a program, and experiences an error. The most reasonable decision that the program can make is just turn it off and let the user start it over. We don't want to correct the error in that case, neither we want to ignore the error, because any of those decisions will incur in an assumption that we are making about the current state of the program, the machine, and the patient. And we don't want to risk the patient's life. And this is most of it. So these are the three most used error handling techniques in software applications. Now, there is an additional technique that can be used in conjunction with any of the ones that I just mentioned. And this technique is logging the error. So error logging comes in a variety of flavors and sizes. So there are a ton of different providers and vendors and techniques that can be used to log the error. Error logging has to be something useful for devs, because at the end of the day, are developers the ones that will be looking at those logs. Aim for descriptive error logs and accurate information that helps you reproduce the error or debug in question. If your application displays some sort of information or error message to the final user, you may want to display some useful information. The more context you provide, the better. But of course, in that case, as it's not an internal log, you will want to skip some information, particularly that one related to the implementation details of your software. And that is all for today, guys. So I hope you liked this video. It was a short one that I wanted to share with you guys, so I hope it shed some light on your decisions and how to properly handle errors in your applications. If you liked this one, leave me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content like this. Have a very nice week and see you later.